For weeks, we've been wondering just what it was that a private investigator named Steve Fisher found inside David's home when he was given access last October.
This is big. This is big because it was always a question of whether
defenders and treated in prison. They got treated bad. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even think nothing about that. I just know that it was like every 15 to 20 minutes that went past, guys was going past this one cell. And it'd be like, there's three of them. One of them would grab the cell door and then be on this side like this, and then the other two would be on this side. So the one, and they did this like every 20 to 30 minutes, every like clockwork. And this one yanked the door open, and the other two on this side had cups full of and boo-boo. So when he yanked the door open, they just throw the cups of boo-boo in there on him, and then close the door, lock it on him. So that was crazy, but, and then some was getting jumped on, some was getting slapped.
The video opens by asking why prosecutors opposed David's request for release, despite defense attorneys arguing that his conditions in custody had become increasingly difficult. It explains that the hearing centered on two competing arguments: the defense's concerns about his treatment while incarcerated, and the prosecution's claim that the evidence presented to the court justified continued detention. The audience is told the video will distinguish between confirmed court proceedings, allegations made by prosecutors, and the defense's responses. The story begins with the June 2026 bond hearing, outlining the defense's request for release pending trial. Attorneys argued that David's confinement conditions were unusually restrictive and raised concerns about his well-being while awaiting trial. Court observers noted his emotional reaction during the proceedings. The video then explains that prosecutors opposed the request, arguing that the seriousness of the evidence and the nature of the case outweighed the defense's concerns. Attention then shifts to digital evidence discussed during the hearing. Prosecutors referenced internet activity, including YouTube viewing history and other digital records that they argued were relevant to their investigation. The video makes clear that these points represent the prosecution's interpretation of the evidence and that the defense is expected to challenge both its significance and its interpretation during future proceedings. The next portion examines David's reported living conditions inside jail. Public court filings described housing restrictions that included protective custody, limited recreation time, restricted visitation, and other security measures. The video contrasts those conditions with David's previous public life, while explaining that correctional officials often impose additional security measures for inmates facing high-profile cases. Former inmates and commentators have shared opinions about conditions inside the facility, but those accounts are presented as personal experiences rather than verified facts about David's circumstances. The discussion then shifts to a series of additional court filings that prosecutors argue further strengthen their case. According to documents referenced during the proceedings, investigators have assembled a combination of witness statements, investigative timelines, and supporting materials that prosecutors believe help establish the sequence of events leading up to the alleged offense. They contend that these filings provide greater context for the government's theory of the case and support their argument that the evidence, when viewed collectively, points toward a clear motive and intentional conduct. However, the video emphasizes an important legal distinction. Court filings are not findings of fact, and the allegations contained within them have not been proven in court. Prosecutors are permitted to present their interpretation of the evidence as the case progresses, but those claims remain subject to challenge by the defense. Until the evidence is fully examined through the judicial process, viewers are reminded that these assertions represent one side's legal arguments rather than established conclusions. Another point that attracted public attention involved subpoenas issued to members of David's family during the investigation. Because these developments quickly generated speculation online, the video provides important context. A subpoena is a routine investigative tool used by prosecutors and grand juries to obtain testimony, documents, or other potentially relevant information. Receiving a subpoena does not automatically suggest that the individual is suspected of criminal conduct, nor does it indicate wrongdoing. In many complex investigations, family members, business associates, and other individuals connected to a defendant may receive subpoenas simply because investigators believe they possess information that could assist the inquiry. The video cautions viewers against interpreting the issuance of subpoenas as evidence of guilt by association. The focus then turns to additional categories of evidence discussed during court proceedings. Prosecutors referenced financial records, online purchases, banking activity, and certain asset transfers that they argue are relevant to understanding the broader circumstances of the investigation. According to the government, these records help support portions of its overall theory and may establish connections between various events outlined in the indictment. Financial evidence often plays an important role in complex criminal cases because it can provide investigators with timelines, transaction histories, and documentation that may either support or contradict witness testimony. Even so, legal analysts interviewed or referenced in coverage of the case point out that financial records are frequently among the most heavily contested forms of evidence presented during criminal proceedings. While documents may appear straightforward, their interpretation is often subject to competing explanations. A transaction viewed by prosecutors as suspicious may be characterized by the defense as entirely lawful or unrelated to the alleged conduct. As a result, the defense is expected to challenge not only the prosecution's factual conclusions, but also the legal significance prosecutors assign to those materials. Questions regarding relevance, context, admissibility, and intent are commonly debated before such evidence is presented to a jury. The video also explores how the hearing sparked renewed discussion across social media platforms. Older interviews, archived videos, podcast appearances, and public statements made years earlier quickly resurfaced online as users attempted to connect past comments to the current allegations. While these clips circulated widely and generated significant discussion, the video carefully distinguishes between internet speculation and evidence that has actually been introduced in court. Online communities often develop theories that extend well beyond the official record, combining unrelated events or drawing conclusions unsupported by the available evidence. For that reason, viewers are reminded to focus on verified court proceedings and official filings rather than assumptions circulating on social media. As the legal process continues, only evidence deemed admissible by the court will ultimately play a role in determining the outcome of the case. It encourages viewers to distinguish between commentary on social media and information contained in official court filings. The hearing ultimately ended without an immediate decision from the judge. Rather than issuing a ruling from the bench, the court chose to take additional time to carefully review the arguments presented by both the prosecution and the defense before determining whether David should remain in custody or be released while awaiting trial. That decision reflects the seriousness of the issues raised during the hearing, with both sides presenting sharply different interpretations of the evidence, the legal standards for pretrial detention, and the conditions surrounding David's confinement. Prosecutors continue to maintain that detention remains necessary. They argue that the evidence collected during the investigation, combined with the nature of the charges, supports keeping David in custody until the case is resolved. From the prosecution's perspective, the court should prioritize ensuring the integrity of the judicial process and minimizing any potential risks that could arise if he were released before trial. They insist that the legal standard for continued detention has been met and that the circumstances of the case justify maintaining the current custody status. The defense, however, sees the situation very differently. David's attorneys argue that the court should also consider the realities of prolonged pretrial confinement and whether strict release conditions could adequately address the concerns raised by prosecutors. They contend that continued detention is unnecessary under the law and that carefully structured conditions, including monitoring requirements and other court-imposed restrictions, could reasonably ensure David's appearance in court while the legal process continues. They have also emphasized concerns about the impact of extended incarceration before any determination of guilt has been made, urging the judge to weigh those factors carefully before issuing a decision. Whatever the court ultimately decides regarding bond, that ruling will represent only one step in a much longer legal process. The criminal case itself is far from over. As proceedings continue, both sides will have additional opportunities to file motions, present new evidence, challenge the credibility and admissibility of opposing evidence, question witnesses, and make further legal arguments before the court. Many of the issues currently being debated are preliminary matters that must be resolved before the case ever reaches a jury. For now, the judge's decision on pretrial release remains pending, and all eyes will be on the next stage of the proceedings. Until a ruling is issued, both the prosecution and the defense will continue preparing for the legal battles ahead, each attempting to strengthen its position as the case moves closer to trial. As always, it is important to remember that these proceedings are part of an ongoing judicial process. The court has not reached a verdict, and no final determination has been made regarding the allegations at the center of this case. The central question before the judge at this stage is not whether David is guilty or innocent, but whether the prosecution has demonstrated that continued detention is legally justified, or whether the defense has shown that release under appropriate conditions is warranted. Those broader questions of criminal responsibility will ultimately be decided only after all admissible evidence has been presented and fully examined through the judicial process. You can end the video with a professional outro that encourages engagement without implying guilt or innocence. That brings us to the latest developments in this ongoing case. For now, the court has heard arguments from both the prosecution and the defense, but many of the most important legal questions remain unresolved. As new hearings are scheduled, additional evidence is presented, and the judge issues future rulings, we'll continue following every major update and breaking down what it could mean for the case moving forward. As always, it's important to remember that this is an active legal proceeding. Allegations made by prosecutors are just that, allegations, and the defense will have the opportunity to challenge the evidence and present its own case in court. The ultimate determination of guilt or innocence can only be made through the judicial process after all admissible evidence has been presented and evaluated. We'll continue monitoring every significant filing, courtroom development, and official statement so you don't have to sort through rumors or speculation online. Our goal is to bring you fact-based updates, explain the legal process in clear terms, and separate verified information from internet theories. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay informed on major criminal cases, courtroom developments, and breaking legal news, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We post in-depth coverage whenever significant developments happen, and we'll be here to explain what they mean as the story continues to unfold. If you have thoughts about today's hearing or questions about the legal process, share them in the comments below. We read your feedback, and it often helps shape future videos and topics we'd like to cover. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.